At 3:57 in the morning, my phone rang, and the first words I heard were, "Why are you still in that house? You've already been evicted." That's how this nightmare started. Imagine being half asleep, your heart pounding, thinking maybe someone in your family had been in an accident. But no, it was the HOA president, a smug voice dripping with entitlement. She said my house, the house I'd lived in for 40 years, the house where I raised my kids, was no longer mine. According to her, they had filed paperwork, sold it at auction, and I had refused to leave. I sat up in bed, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I told her, "What are you talking about? My mortgage is paid. My taxes are current. This is my home." But she laughed, a cruel, whispery laugh. "Not anymore," she said. "We've already notified the county. Expect deputies to remove you." The conflict started fast. The HOA had been trying to push me out for years. They said my front porch swing was unsightly. They hated my flagpole with the American flag. They fined me for parking my old pickup in the driveway, even though it was perfectly legal. But this eviction in the middle of the night? I stumbled outside in my robe. The street was dark and quiet, but I swear I saw the flicker of flashlights near the HOA office down the block. They were watching me, and in that moment, I felt the deepest anger I've ever felt in my life. The next morning, I checked my mailbox, and there it was. A bright orange paper, taped right to my door, notice of eviction, vacate. Immediately, stamped with the HOA's logo, neighbors walking their dogs slowed down, whispered, pointed. Someone even took a picture. I ripped that paper off the door, my hands shaking. This wasn't just harassment anymore. They were trying to erase me. I drove to the county courthouse first thing. The clerk looked at me with confusion when I handed over the notice. She typed on her computer, squinted, then shook her head. "Sir, there's no record of any eviction against you. No foreclosure, nothing." I felt relief for a second. But then I realized what that meant. The HOA had faked the notice. They wanted me scared. They wanted me out. And let me tell you, it worked. For a little while, I barely slept. I sat up at night with the porch light on, shotgun leaning against the door. Every sound outside made, you think the sheriff was about to kick it in. But here's the part that still makes my blood boil. On day 3 of this madness, I caught them. I woke up to the sound of footsteps on my porch. I yanked the door open, and there she was. Karen, the HOA president herself. She jumped like she'd seen a ghost. "Oh, we were just checking compliance," she stammered. Behind her, 2 HOA board members were snapping photos of my house. At dawn, without permission, I said, "You think you can scare me into leaving my own home? You'll regret this," Karen smirked. "We'll see who regrets it." She walked off, heels clicking against the pavement like a gavel. From that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to fight. I was going to expose them, but I had no idea how ugly it was going to get. They weren't just faking papers. They were forging signatures, filing fake liens. And when I dug deeper, I uncovered something that nearly burned this whole town down. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that eviction notice taped to my door. I heard Karen's smug voice, so I started digging first. I pulled every single letter, fine, and noticed the HOA had ever sent me. Boxes full. 40 years of petty harassment. I spread them across my kitchen table like a war map. That's when I saw it. The signature's the same sloppy, jagged scrawl on half the documents. Even the ones supposedly signed by different board members. I drove to my buddy Frank's house. He's a retired cop, sharp as a tack, and he still had friends at the county. I showed him the papers. He whistled low. "Son, this isn't just HOA bullying. This is fraud. Federal mail fraud. If they've been filing fake liens, they're in big trouble." We spent the next week quietly collecting evidence, photos, copies of documents, witness statements from neighbors who'd been fined for ridiculous things. Like one lady whose HOA claimed her roses were too red. The deeper we dug, the worse it got. Turns out, Karen and her little HOA crew had a scheme. They would target elderly homeowners, people on fixed incomes. They'd pile on bogus fines, then file fake liens. When those people got scared and sold, Karen said no. Yeah. Her greedy son was a real estate agent, would swoop in and buy the homes, dirt cheap. Then they'd flip them for triple the price. It was a family racket and my house. My 40-year home, with its big oak tree and the porch swing where I used to rock my grandkids, that was their next target. The final straw came 2 weeks later. I came home from grocery shopping and found a locksmith drilling my front door. I shouted, "Ah!" "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He froze, looked nervous. The HOA told me this property was abandoned. Behind him, Karen stood with her arms crossed, smirking like she'd already won. I called the sheriff right there. Lights flashed, sirens wailed, and the neighbors gathered. Karen tried to spin it, claiming I was a squatter. But when the deputy asked for proof of eviction, she had nothing. Just her smug smile cracking into panic. That night, I made another decision. I wasn't just going to fight quietly. I was going public. I called the local news station. I handed them everything: documents, signatures, witness lists. I told them the whole story. 2 days later, my little town was on fire. News vans parked on my street. Reporters shoving mics at Karen, neighbors rallying around me, one by one. People came forward with their own stories. Fake fines, harassment, property theft, and the look on Karen's face when the cameras caught her storming out of the HOA office. Priceless. But the fight wasn't over. Not yet. Because when people like Karen get cornered, they get dangerous. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. They thought they could intimidate us into silence. But this time, the community showed up. The room was packed. Every seat filled. People standing against the walls. I walked in carrying a box of evidence. My neighbors clapped me on the back. Even the mayor showed up. Karen sat at the front, her arms folded tight. Her son sat next to her, sweating bullets. When it was my turn to speak, I set the box on the table, pulled out one forged lien after another, held them high for everyone to see. "Look at this," I said. "These aren't mistakes. These are crimes. And they've been doing it to all of us." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then Frank, my retired cop buddy, stood up. He'd called in a favor. 2 detectives walked into the room. Badges flashing. Cameras rolling. Karen's face went pale. The lead detective said, "Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions about fraudulent documents and real estate theft." The room erupted. Neighbors shouting, phones recording. Karen tried to stand, but her legs buckled. Her son muttered something about misunderstandings. But the detectives weren't buying it. That night, the story hit every local station. HOA President investigated for fraud. Within a week, the state attorney got involved. Charges filed. The board dissolved, and me. I stayed right in my home. I walked out on my porch swing every evening, waved at the neighbors, and raised my flag a little higher, because I hadn't just fought for myself. I'd fought for all of us. But here's the part that meant the most. One night, as the sun set behind that big oak tree, my grandson climbed onto the swing beside me. He said, "Grandpa, I'm glad you didn't let them take our home." That hit me harder than anything. It wasn't just a house. It was family, history, roots, and no HOA, no Karen. No greedy little scheme was ever going to rip that away. Justice was served. Karen was exposed. The community took back its power. And me. I finally slept through the night again. Asterisk, so what do you think? Have you ever had an HOA or a neighbor try to push you around? Share your stories down in the comments. I want to hear every one of them. And don't forget to subscribe because I've got plenty more HOA drama where this came from.